So a week after I bought my camera, Canon decides to drop the Canon EOS R8.
But am I upset? No, I am not. A little.
I just wanted to go over this because I have a lot of photographers in the Caribbean who don't have the luxury that we have up here in the States, where we can go and test out the cameras or buy it, and if we don't like it, we can return. In the Caribbean, once you buy something, that's it. You're stuck with that, man. You'll have to try and sell it to get a next one. So I like to try and make these videos so people who do not have that luxury that we have up here, they can have an informed, they can have the proper information that they can make a decisive decision on which way they want to go. So I just bought the EOS R7, and literally a week after I bought it, Canon decides to go and release the Canon EOS R8. Now, do I regret it? Let me tell you straight up, right up off the bat, no, I do not regret it. If that's the answer you were looking for, then you can go ahead and just skip past this video and keep it moving. But if you do want to know the reasons why, then let's get into it. So the Canon EOS R8 dropped, and yes, listen, don't get me wrong, guys, I'm going to say this right off the bat. If you are just getting in the market and you are looking for a camera that is superb for a great deal bargain price at $1,500, and you are not invested in any other camera system, or you're looking to switch over to another camera system and you want an entry-level camera, by all means, that Canon EOS R8 is a great camera for you to start with. If you can afford that at $1,500, what you are getting for that camera at that price point, you cannot go wrong. By all means, go ahead and get the Canon EOS R8. Now, if you are looking and deciding which one to get, this is why I'm making this video, because I have the R7 and the R8 just dropped. Now, if you're watching this, you're probably wondering, hey, should I get the R8 or the R7? Now, the R7, for me, I'm going to tell you is a better buy, and here's why. The EOS R7 has 32.5 megapixels, whereas the Canon EOS R8 has 24.2 megapixels. That for me is already a win, because that is what I want. I want more megapixels in my camera. Now, if you're looking for something with less megapixels, then the R8 may be for you. Now, these are my opinions. These are the reasons why I do not regret getting the R7 as opposed to the R8. The R7 has 32.5 megapixels. That's a win in my book over the 24.2 megapixels in the R8. The R7 has in-body image stabilization, whereas the R8 does not have in-body image stabilization. That is another win for me in the R7 over the R8. Now, don't get me wrong, Canon do have OIS in their lenses, optical image stabilization. So you can get by using the optical, the OIS in the lens with the R8. But for me, I'm not a videographer guy. So I can't do the stealth walk thing. I just do videos for you guys. I do videos so you guys can see my behind the scenes. I do videos where I do vlogging and stuff, and that's it. I don't want to venture forth really into that video world. So I just want a camera that can get the job done for me. So having in-body image stabilization paired with the OIS, that's even better, you know. I did some tests while I had this for the week, and I'll insert some footage right here for you guys to see. This was me walking in my backyard, and it's in the grass. They have holes and stuff like that. And I was not stealth walking or anything. I was just literally walking handheld. I literally had this. This is what I was holding in my hand. I was holding this, screwed onto the bottom of that R7. And that's what I was walking with. And that got the footage for me is so smooth and is not shaky as opposed to other videos where I've tested other cameras. Man, that camera will be shaking all over the place. So for me, the footage on the R7 with that image stabilization is beautiful. Now with the R8, you won't have that. So you only have the OIS in the lens. So that for me is a win again with the R7. R7 body is smaller than the R8. So that for me is another win. It's less inconspicuous. If you want to travel, it's lightweight, and you can use that to travel with, whereas the R8 is a full body size. So it's still relatively smaller than the R5 and other bodies, but the R7 is still smaller than the R8. Now on top of that also, the R7 has a shutter speed of 1/8,000th of a second, whereas the R8 have a shutter speed of 1/4,000th of a second. That again is a win for me in the R7 because the way I shoot, my style of shooting, I need every shutter speed I can get. So that 1/4,000th of a second, in most cases with the way I shoot, my style of shooting will not be enough because I like to shoot wide open and I need as much shutter speed as I can get to shoot with HSS. I don't like to use the ND filters. There are cases where there's use for it and there's cases where there's not. Me, I prefer not to use it. I can get by with my high shutter speed. So for me, that 1/8,000th of a second is a win for me in the R7 over the R8. Another win for me is the R7 has a bigger battery. The R7 has a bigger battery than the R8. The R8 battery, now don't get me wrong, you can get by with the R8 battery, but the R7 battery is a lot bigger. So you're gonna get a lot more runtime on the R7 over the R8. Whereas with the R8, you would have to now buy a separate battery to compete with that one battery from the R7. A bonus feature or bonus addition to that is the R7 battery, which is the LPE6H or something. Don't quote me on that. I think it's the LP. Anyway, the battery that the Canon EOS 7 R7 uses, it also comes from or stems from the other batteries that the previous Canon bodies use. So if you are a Canon user and you have batteries from your, let's say your Canon R5, your Canon 5D Mark III, Mark IV, those batteries will also work with your Canon EOS R7. Whereas with the R8, those batteries will not. And the battery with the R8 is a lot smaller than the Canon EOS R7. So that for me is also a win with the Canon EOS R7. All right, so let's remember one thing though, before we even continue. The Canon EOS R8 is catered as an entry level camera. So they had to cut costs somewhere. So it's not to say it's the top tier of their Canon full frame bodies, it's more of their entry level. So a lot of the stuff are watered down. For example, they use the same EVF and the same LCD as the R7. So you're not getting any much difference as in quality wise using the LCD or the EVF from the Canon EOS R7 or the R8. So they are both on par where that is concerned. The only benefit for me where I see that the R8 is better than the R7 is the fact that the R8 is a full frame sensor. So now you are going to capture more detail in that full frame sensor as opposed to the image that the quality that you would capture on the R7, because the R7 is an APS-C sensor. So where that matters is you're going to have more information in that full frame sensor, okay? You're also going to have more depth of field because of that full frame sensor as opposed to the APS-C sensor. Is that a big factor for me? No, it is not. I'll be honest with you guys, the quality of these APS sensor of this age, of 2023 and up, from 2022, all these new cameras coming out, hell, even my XT3, they have done such a great job with these APS-C sensor cameras right now that you cannot even tell the difference if it was shot with a full frame or APS-C. So for me, sensor size right now doesn't even matter, okay? You have to go with what works for you and what you're looking for, all right? But with that being said, the R8, because it's a full frame sensor, you are going to get more depth of field because a 1.2 on a lens will be a 1.2 on a full frame sensor. Whereas a 1.2, given the fact that this APS-C, the R7, is a 1.6 crop factor, that will now become a 1.9. So now the depth of field difference is different, you know, because of that APS-C crop factor, all right? So I'm just putting that out there, so this is information that you can gather as well. That's where I find that the difference comes in between the R7 and the R8, that full frame sensor. But that's not a difference for me where I can say that it's enough for me to want the R8 over the R7, because the specs of the R7 supersedes the R8. Video specs, they both share the same video specs. Now again, remember the R8 is full frame, so you're going to get a full frame readout on your sensor as opposed to the R7, which is APS-C. But as far as the specs, they both have the same specs where it comes to video settings, all right? So it balances out for me in that point. Another win for me with the R7 is the fact that the R7 has 2 SD card slots, whereas the R8 only has 1 card slot. On top of that now, the R8, their card slot is located in the battery bay at the bottom of the camera. So let's say now you are using a gimbal and your card has, your memory is full or something and you need to change that. You now have to take that off of the gimbal, swap the card, put it back in the battery, and then put it back on your gimbal. Now, it may not sound tedious to some of you guys, but for me that's a bit tedious. Whereas with the R7 that has 2 card slots, so now if one card slot is full, you can now choose to have that now record to the secondary card slot. All right. Or if you don't have that, whereas you want to choose now as a backup, you can now have that R7 record simultaneously to both cards. So if your first card slot fails, you also have the second card slot that can now capture the video or the pictures that you are recording. Okay. On top of that now, the fact that it's on the side of the camera as opposed to the bottom of the camera, you do not have to take it off of your gimbal if you're using that. You can just simply open your side, swap your cards, and continue recording. There's no taking out, there's no hassle of having to remove it from the gimbal, okay? So that for me is definitely a win with the R7. One more thing with the R7 and the R8 is the fact that even though the R8 is full frame and the R7 is APS-C, the R7 and the R8 share the same RF mount. So now you can now use the full frame lenses on the R7. So for example, I have this right here, which is the EF version. This is the EF 85 1.2, and I have it with the EF to the RF adapter. So now I can use this on my R7 body, which is equivalent, which is my favorite focal length, which is equivalent to a 135. So with that 1.2 aperture, given the fact that it's a crop sensor, I now get an equivalent of a 135 1.8. Well, let's just say a 136 1.9, but you get the picture. It's equivalent to a full frame 135 1.8. Now, I like that because now I have the smaller body with this, where I can get that depth of field, the same depth of field as a 135 1.8, which no other APS-C camera is doing, not even Fujifilm. I'll get to that in the next video. All right, so yes, that's a good feature with that Canon has done, whereas they all carry the same mount. I'm actually right now recording with the full frame 16mm f2.8 STM Canon RF lens. That's what I'm recording with, and as you can see, it is working flawless right now. Another thing with that too, why I love the R7 or why I prefer the R7 is because it's an APS-C, it now only uses the center of these full frame lenses. So you are getting the best bits of that lens, all right? Because it's only using the center of the lens instead of the whole sensor or the whole glass of that full frame lens. So you, like I said, you're getting the best bits of the lens, all right? I hope this was informative for you guys. I hope you guys can now make an informative decision based on the information that was put out. And you guys can now decide which one you prefer over the R7 or the R8. If this was helpful, guys, please hit that like button. Drop a comment. Let me know how it helped you. Let me know if it indeed did make you make a good decision. And if it did, hit that subscribe button for more. All right. You guys enjoy and make sure you guys have a good weekend, whatever. I need to find an outro. But until then, y'all be safe, man. Later.